This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsahone, and today is Friday, and that means it's time for the 491st edition of MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. At least that's what most videos in this series do. Sometimes I also like to look at the opposite end of the spectrum, the absolute worst cards ever printed, and that's what we're doing today, with a look at the worst demons ever. I've already taken a look at the game's best demons, so it only seems right to do a top 10 on the worst ones. Wizards of the Coast refers to demons as Black's iconic creature type. This means that they appear in almost every set, usually at higher rarities, and they tend to have really powerful designs. This means that on average, demons actually tend to be pretty darn good. But that doesn't mean there aren't awful demons out there, especially among those that were printed before Wizards designated demons as the iconic type for Black. This is especially true because demons often have the flavor of making you give up something to get something. This is often conveyed through a demon card having a significant downside, and sometimes those downsides are just way too much for what you're getting. This kind of list isn't nearly as data-driven as the ones on the best cards, and ultimately the cards that appear on this list and the order in which they appear is based on my own opinion. However, cards can't be on this list if they are widely played in EDH, nor can they have been played in any deck that top-8'd a significant tournament. In all, there are 153 demons in Magic, and in this video, I'll give you my picks for the 10 worst ones ever. At number 10, I have Carver Demon. This demon is, by far, the most widely played card on this list, although seeing play in around 1,000 decks out of 700,000 isn't that impressive, but that tells you something about how bad the rest of this list is. Anyway, there's no doubt that he has a powerful effect, but the problem is he really forces you to be all in on it, and that is a massive risk. When it deals combat damage to a player, you sacrifice all of your other permanents and exile the top 6 cards of your library. You can cast those cards without paying their mana costs, which is great. Most of the time, though, a random top 6 cards isn't going to be better than all of your other permanents on the battlefield were, so you better hope that the top 6 cards you see do enough to win you the game on the spot. Otherwise, you're going to be in some serious trouble. It is especially frustrating that he doesn't let you play lands from that top 6, so they are just complete misses if he hits those. Even if you do set up a silly combo with him with something like Doomsday, he still has the huge hurdle of needing to hit your opponent to get going. So basically, Carver Demon isn't worth it in a deck that isn't comboing off with him, and he's a pretty inconsistent way to try to combo off in the first place. He definitely has a cool and fun effect, and that's what makes him more popular than the other cards on the list, which are generally both bad and not that much fun to play with. At number 9, I have Infernal Denizen. While it doesn't say demon on the printed card, the Denizen has since been given that creature type. This is something we'll see on a few of the older cards on this list. Trust me, if they're on this list, they're technically demons these days. Anyway, this demon costs a ton of mana, especially for a 5/7, but it does actually have a kind of powerful ability. It can tap to steal an opposing creature for as long as the Denizen is around. The bad news, in addition to that massive mana cost, is that you also have to give up 2 swamps on every single upkeep, and if you're unable to, your opponent gets to steal one of your creatures. So the Denizen can win some games before the downside starts to matter, since stealing opposing creatures is so powerful, but the prohibitive mana cost and the fact that he will actively make you lose the game if it goes too long is pretty rough. At number 8, it is the Wretched. This is another demon that can gain control of opposing creatures, but he's even worse at it than Infernal Denizen. He's a 5-mana 2/5, and at the end of each combat, you gain control of all creatures that blocked it. Note, by the way, that he has to survive combat for the ability to trigger. So, yeah, if your opponent is in a situation where they can't take it down in combat, they're just going to take 2, and it won't be a big deal. Once they can take it down in combat, you won't really be able to attack with it anymore. And sure, you could use a crazy Voltron strategy and slap a bunch of equipment or auras on it, including a lure effect, and that would be pretty funny, but that's a ton of work to do, and there are hundreds of better creatures you could be doing that with. At number 7, it is Razorjaw Oni. This is the first of several demons on the list from Kamigawa block. The Oni comes with above rate stats as a 4-mana 4/5, but he also makes it so black creatures can't block, and that includes himself. The effect is symmetrical, so it can sometimes be kind of funny against another black deck, but you're the one playing Razorjaw Oni, so it's more likely that it'll hurt you more than it will hurt your opponent. And even in a super aggressive deck that doesn't plan on blocking very much, the Oni doesn't quite have good enough of stats to overcome the downside. At number 6, it is Scourge of Newmai, another Kamigawa demon with a significant downside. The Scourge and several other demons in that block have kind of an interesting design since they are at their best if you have an ogre around. They sort of wanted you to make a tribal deck that had two different creature types, with ogres who cared about demons and demons who cared about ogres. This sort of worked in Kamigawa Limited, but even there, most of the cards that were demon ogre tribal were pretty underwhelming. Basically, they needed to give these cards more upside to make up for the downside, and they didn't do that with the Scourge. It's a 4-mana 4/4. That's it. That's what you get if you jump through those ogre hoops. Otherwise, you also lose 2 life every single upkeep. They really should have made it a 5/5 or something, then it might have avoided this list. At number 5, we have 2 more Kamigawa demons who like ogres, Gut-Wrencher and Painracker Oni. I put them together because they were intentionally designed as a pair, as you can see from their mana cost, their stats, their effects, and their art. Both give you a 5-mana 5/4 with a keyword ability, and both have a significant downside if you don't have an ogre around. Gut-Wrencher comes with Trample and makes you discard a card each upkeep if you don't control an ogre, and Painracker comes with Fear and forces you to sacrifice a creature each upkeep if you don't control an ogre. So, like with the Scourge, you get 2 creatures with pretty medium stats that come with a significant downside. I think their downsides are even bigger than the Scourge's, so I have them above it, even though they do come with keyword abilities. You can definitely turn their downsides into upsides if you try really hard, but if you want to be discarding cards or sacrificing creatures, there is a mountain of cards that are better at enabling that sort of thing, and most of them don't also have a downside when situations aren't perfect. At number 5, I have Shimatsu, the Bloodcloaked. He's a legendary demon, so he can even be played as a commander, but you shouldn't be doing that, even if 20 crazy people on EDH are. Basically, Shimatsu comes into play, and then you have to sacrifice some number of permanents. For each permanent you sacrifice, he gets a +1/+1 counter. That's it. This is another demon that asks for a lot and just doesn't deliver. He just becomes a huge vanilla creature that is very easy to remove, so you have to sacrifice a bunch of things to make him worth the mana, but you're also putting yourself at an even bigger risk the more things you sacrifice. This card is basically a lose-lose situation personified. I know people like to defend any card that lets you sacrifice a whole bunch of stuff, and yeah, there is some value to be had there. But there are hundreds of better sacrifice outlets out there that give you a better payoff and aren't nearly as risky and aren't nearly as all or nothing. That's why Shimatsu really isn't played a whole lot in EDH, even in the plethora of sacrifice decks that are out there. At number 3, I have 2 vanilla demons, Lady Orca and Renegade Demon. There's not much to say here. They're both creatures that have bad vanilla stats and don't do anything else. Lady Orca is definitely the worst of the 2. Don't get me wrong, a 5-mana 5/3 is awful, but Lady Orca is not only an abysmal 7-mana 7/4, she also demands that you have 2 different colors of mana. Believe it or not though, I think there are 2 demons that are worse than these. Like our number 2, which is Illusory Demon. This creature actually has a nice stat line. A 3-mana 4/3 with flying is some serious business, but yeah, the downside is massive. As soon as you cast a spell, it gets sacrificed, and that's any spell, not just instants and sorceries. You can't cast anything without losing the demon. So when you play it, you better hope that it can win you the game all on its own, because that's what it's going to have to do. And it probably isn't going to get you there. So you'll just end up casting another spell at some point so you don't lose, at which point you're starting yourself off with a 2-for-1. Ouch. There's still one demon that I think is worse though, and that's Mold Demon, which I have at number 1. Mold Demon fails the vanilla test as a 7-mana 6/6, so you might think that the text box would have some upside, but nope, it's all downside, and significant downside since you have to sacrifice 2 swamps when it enters the battlefield. I also think the art in this card is awful, as I noted in my video on the worst art in Magic, but I did learn that the art on the card is pretty polarizing from making that video. People either hate it or love it, but regardless of how you feel about this art, this is the worst demon ever printed. So, those are my picks for the 10 worst demons ever. Do you think there are any terrible demons that I left off of the list? Let me know in the comments. If you want to own any of these cards because, I don't know, maybe you like to lose games of Magic, check out the description where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each of them. If you want to stay aware of future content, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to catch up on past MTG top 10s, including more on the worst cards ever, or the one on the best demons ever, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.